Well, hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. Now, it's a time for a tier list update, right? So before we get any further, few of the mandatory disclaimers here. This list is a mixture of my personal view of the game and the current game relevance and trends. Please do not use this list as a point of argument, but more of as a food for thought. Each summoner has different needs and preferences that far outweigh the importance of this list. Please rank the champions that will help you get where you are trying to go, and do not blindly follow these types of lists. What I mean by that is, if you need somebody for Alliance for defense, rank up whoever you need for Alliance for defense. If you need somebody to defeat Variant 5, then rank up champions that are good for Variant 5. If you need somebody that's going to make your Alliance quest days easier, rank up whoever is going to help you clear your Alliance quest with less item use. That is kind of like target goal oriented ranking that is best to be done in this game. It doesn't matter if one champion is technically better than another. If you have another champion that can do the same job, but you're severely lacking in some other departments. That being said, this list up here only includes champions that are out as 6 stars. For the 5 stars, we have a mini list down here. The link to this spreadsheet will be available in the video description. Also, I purposely do not add additional information, whether these champions need to be awakened, whether they need synergies, so on and so forth, because I want you guys to do as much of your own research as possible. Now, this list obviously also will not necessarily mirror what your guys' opinions and views of the game are, and that is perfectly fine. If you disagree with something or many things in particular, cool. I would never want you guys to read this list and agree 100% at every single take that I have. That being said, let's just explain the tiers. As always, top of the game basically means the best of the best, creme de la creme. And as I said before, the game also has its current trends, and the champions that would be considered the best of the best 2 or 3 years ago often are not today. And that's not because they got any worse, it's just because the game's changing. For instance, a good example here would be Aegon. Aegon, whilst Act 6 was coming out, was significantly more useful day-to-day champion, because Act 6 path used to be longer. We didn't used to get all these attack bonuses, therefore the fights in Act 6 typically used to be longer, and Abyss of Legends served bigger level of importance in the game than it does right now, and therefore, just by the nature of what kind of content exists in the game, Aegon would easily be considered as top of the game. If we do receive yet another Everest type of content, and if it turns out that Aegon is by far the best one there, and if Act 8 is kind of more suited to Aegon like Act 6 was, because Act 7 really wasn't for most part, then he might climb back up again, because, you know, people think that he's only good for Labyrinth and Abyss, but it's really not true. He's also very great in many questing situations with his ability to damage through block, with his guaranteed crits, almost guaranteed crits, ability to shrug off debuffs and everything else. And you only need to get to about 100-150 combo before he already becomes an amazing champion. Fortunately, in Act 7, it's all 6 fights per path, and most of them have some sort of additional attack bonuses, and you just have absolutely no need to try and ramp up Aegon. So you can get much better results with like Falcon, Moleman, Nick Fury, Shang-Chi, and Kingpin, specifically there. That's what I mean with the game trends, right? Top of the game is fairly simple. Those are the best of the best champions currently available of the game. In my head, basically automatic rank ups if you know how to use these champions. These are the champions that dominate like all the game modes, or most of the game modes in each individual case. They're typically the champions that you see in the forefront of the game. When new challenging content comes out, you see them used most often in Alliance Wars, you see them often used in Alliance quests. These are the champions that you would kind of build, quote-unquote, your blind teams from whenever you have to take on some new challenge. Basically, the best of the best for whatever is happening in the game currently. And there is absolutely... No, there's actually one change from top of the game list. There is one demotion, which is Moleman, which is to do with his true accuracy not being present anymore when he enters Frenzy. Moleman's still going to be a fantastic champion. People who are saying that he's going to be garbage, I mean, I think are completely wrong, are absolutely exaggerating the impact. The impact is big, but everything else that Moleman has is still amazing and is still good, and he's still going to be used for a ton of things in Alliance Quest, in questing situations, in Cav EQ. He's going to be used a ton in Battlegrounds. We already did have a Battlegrounds beta with Moleman after the changes, and guess what? He still was phenomenal offensively. He was still phenomenal defensively. There were like 2 matchups where you could use Moleman before and you would be more hesitant right now. For instance, Overseer and something else. But in general, Moleman still was an absolutely amazing champion for the game mode. So I do think at the moment that is perfectly where he's going to stay. I still think he's going to have quite big presence in the game. I do, however, recognize that his value has dropped, especially in the most competitive high tier contents, which is exactly what top of the game type of situations are there for. And the promotion there goes for Shang-Chi, because I do think with the decline in Moleman, we're going to see increase of use of Shang-Chi and Falcon as well, potentially, because both of them can kind of cover that anti-evade aspects that Moleman has. Obviously, Shang-Chi does it by slow, Falcon does it with a lock-on. Both of those methods are slightly different. Both of them have some upsides, both of them have some weaknesses, but overall, I would say that Shang-Chi is better as a champion, and I genuinely have seen his role increase already in the game, and I do think that for now, I'm not sure if he's going to stay there forever, but at the moment I did place Shang-Chi up there, and that, you know, also obviously respectively does knock down Moleman slightly lower in the skill rankings. Ironically, Kingpin has gotten his damage fixed, so Kingpin is even more dominant, I think, as the best skill champion in the game. I'm just going to leave that there. And that, again, was quite well displayed in Battlegrounds, where even if opponent is unblockable the entire fight, he was still an absolute powerhouse, even in that meta. But I'm going to leave that there. Other than that, there are no other changes, and we can check out meta. Now, in the meta tab, I think, aside from what I listed, it didn't really change anything else at all. Everything as was before. I do think Scorpion is meta, and now that he's introduced in the new feature, 6-star crystals, congratulations to everybody who pulled him. He's gonna prove that extremely quickly, and I have seen a ton of insane stuff from Scorpion already. Hulkling is slightly newer, so at the moment I'm keeping him in frequently useful tier, but I have absolutely no doubts that he's gonna move into the meta probably with the next update as well. It's just I actually want to see him in action more. I actually want to see him, you know, covered in wars and everywhere else. But I have 100% faith that he will move up there. One thing that I did forget is go over the rest of the tiers. So meta, by definition, is in every kind of game situation, competitive gaming situation, always referred to as the most popular, most effective solutions. So top of the game is, again, the best of the best. The meta is virtually the next step down from top of the game. These are the champions, again, that people most often have ranked up. These are the champions that people most often use for difficult situations, as their daily questing champions, as their problem solvers. Effectively, the top 2 tiers represent kind of like the best of the best, and the champions that get ranked up most frequently. Now we have frequently useful as fairly self-explanatory. All of these champions are extremely good. The difference here in between like meta, top of the game, and frequently useful would be that these typically are the champions that are great for a lot of stuff, but there will be several things that these champions are not particularly good at, or where they take a step back. They typically more have some sort of specialized uses. They have specific game modes where they are very, very good, and then some game modes where they are very rubbish, or, you know, they rarely are the champions that you use as your like daily questing teams, but they are still frequently the champions that we like to rank up, that are our favorite champions and that we can find a ton of uses in the game. Useful champions, again, just as it sounds. There's nothing wrong with the champion. There are uses for these guys. They are not necessarily the champions that, you know, you want to rank up immediately or specifically chase for in many crystals. These are the champions that you typically rank up once you have covered most of the bases from the first half here. These are the champions that, you know, you might find them to be your personal favorites for one reason or another, but for an average player, these are not the champions that they would rush the quickest to rank up or chase these champions or try and, you know, grind for them in arenas or open a ton of cats. Occasionally useful is a step back. Those are the champions that can have some very, very cool abilities and redeeming aspects. These still can be people's favorite champions. There are many champions that I find to be some of my personal favorites. For instance, we have Carnage here, which is amazingly fun champion. One of the favorite champions for me to use. Man-Thing here, absolutely love using Man-Thing as well. And a bunch of different champions that definitely can do things in the game, but 9 out of 10 times, or should I say 19 out of 20 times, there will be significantly better and easier options for whatever problem you are trying to solve. However, there might be some cases that for one circumstance or another, these might actually be the best options, but that typically is in the very specific conditions where, for instance, you can only use XL Mystic Champion, and then you happen to need also like Poison and Bleed immunity, and then you're like, oh, Dormammu fits that description, kind of. But for most part, these are not necessarily the champions that people rush to rank up other than for like a very, very specific purpose or some personal favoritism. And then we have useless, borderline unplayable, or insignificant champions. These are basically the champions that are completely outdated or just ineffective or the biggest duds released by Kabam. So we have like the Airwalkers, the Super Skrulls, the Superior Iron Mans, and all that other shebang there. Right, let's cover the rest of the changes here. I know this time tier list breakdowns kind of messed around there. One of the more important promotions at the moment, Silver Surfer. Silver Surfer honestly has been kind of going from strength to strength to strength. When he was released, there wasn't that much to do with him. There wasn't that much content for him, and there was just no real reason really to use Silver Surfer. But as time goes by, more and more nodes, more and more paths, more and more pieces of content kind of make this champion better, let him shine. We noticed that with the introduction of energy adoption nodes, which obviously significantly help Silver Surfer, give him basically infinite healing and extra damage, significant amounts of extra damage. Then on top of all of that, turns out that, for instance, in my personal case, he is like one of the best Alliance Quest champions for me. If I'm not running Liquid Courage Double Edge, he is my main Alliance Quest champion because he has super easy access to the 3 debuffs for the Distract node. He has super easy access to 3 buffs for buffed up lanes. Easy to maintain. He does a ton of damage. And as like the final push that I needed here, yet again, was Battlegrounds, because people still don't believe it, but Silver Surfer is like one of the best Battlegrounds attackers. He's like one of the fastest options against Penny Parker. He can do those fights in like sub 30 seconds at times. And then he wrecks many of the other difficult fights like Bishops, like Havocs. He can destroy Mole Man like nobody's business. That can be very annoying, and just a ton of different annoying matchups. He seems to work perfectly. So he's like a very good description of a champion that came out before content for him had arrived in the game. But with pretty much everything happening around the game, he's just becoming better and better. And honestly, I do not regret ranking him to rank 4 at all. I obviously did it mainly for prestige, but he has been one of, if not the most used rank 4 on my account, just because of the Battlegrounds and Alliance Quest primarily. So I definitely felt like it's time to move him up to frequently useful as well here. Now, what did I change? Toad we already promoted the last time around. I do fully believe that that is where he belongs. I moved Rintra up as well because Rintra has been kind of like more and more impressive. He's obviously a good defender with a massive health pool, but he's also extremely potent offensively. He is somewhat quirky. People do need to get used to him, but now that many more people will have him, I do believe we're going to see a lot more of this guy dominating several aspects of the game. So I do have quite a lot of faith in Rinter that he's actually going to climb higher. It's kind of funny because initially Wong seemed to be the more impressive champion, but realistically, Wong has problems connecting his awesomeness, and I like Wong. I have a rank 3 Wong. I recently got him awakened. He's very fun, very exciting champion to play. It's just nowhere really to use him for. Like, you can bring him in Abyss and Labyrinth, but, you know, and then he's good in Alliance War defense, fair. But, you know, is he a good Alliance Quest champion? No. Is he a good Alliance War champion? No. Is he a good Battlegrounds champion? Not really. Is he a good casual questing champion? Not really. And Rintra is, as most of the champions up here. So it's kind of funny that, again, how initial impressions just might be misleading, and once dust settles down, you clearly see that the opinions can shift and change. Another champion that did get a promotion to a higher tier is Massacre. Massacre has been impressing more and more people. Sweden has been uploading some crazy Alliance War gameplay. Finn has been wrecking Battlegrounds with Massacre. Many people have been using much more of Massacre in many different game modes, and I'm super happy to finally pull the plug as well, rank 3 the guy. And this time I wanted to accent that as well, right next to the inclusion of Valkyrie, because Valkyrie is very similar to Massacre, but in general, I do think Massacre is the better champion. Now, I think that if you do have Sig 200 Valkyrie, then there's an argument that Valkyrie is the better champion because of her ability to ignore the unstoppable and be stun immune, which is fair enough. So my kind of characterization at the moment, which might shift in future, would be that if both of these champions are unduped, Massacre is 100% better. If both of these champions are duped and low Sig, I still think Massacre is better. I think if Valkyrie is Sig 200, then she's better than Massacre. Possibly. But in general, both champions kind of do a very similar thing. They do a ton of damage in the block, but you know, they have these massive bursty level 2s. But there is a very big difference that Massacre also has access to Incinerate, also has access to Bleed, also has access to Disorient, which are all very important factors, which Valkyrie really doesn't, kind of. So yes, Valkyrie does have that pacifism mechanic on heavy attack, but she also has much more finicky, I would say, playstyle with going back and forth in your combo meters and lining things up. And it's just easier with Massacre, you know, get your bat ignited and you're good. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, but at the moment I genuinely prefer Massacre for the job that Valkyrie has been released to do. But obviously Valkyrie has the prestige. I still think Valkyrie is going to be a very, very good and useful champion, and since she has the high prestige, obviously we're going to see a lot of them ranked up, and we're going to see a lot of interesting gameplay from her as well. Starking and Spider-Man has been recently promoted primarily because of the Battlegrounds. I'm going to be super honest with that as well. Agent Venom now is in the useful tier as well because of the synergy setup, and because we have actually seen some of Agent Venom pop up somewhere in competitive aspects. And last meaningful thing that I need to talk about is Gore. Gore's deep dive looked quite horrible. Gore does have an innate weakness that virtually, if you're running Liquid Courage Double Edge, that champion is completely unplayable to you, which always sucks when Kabam does that. You know, not every champion, in my opinion, has to be Liquid Courage Double Edge friendly. It's perfectly fine that we have champions like Professor X and stuff like that, but I don't think Kabam should be releasing champions that just, you know, I guess I'm gonna die then. You know, completely unplayable with specific mastery setups, especially given the fact that we do not have access to mastery loadouts. So there is a big problem with that. Other than that, I do think he looks better than he looked in his deep dive. I do think that he will have some sort of small place in a game. I do think also that eventually over time he might find similar niches like Silver Surfer did, where maybe the content for him is just not yet created. I can see quite easily where, you know, in future he might be a good AQ or some AW champion with his, you know, get to level 2 heavy attack nuke type of thing. But as is right now, I'm just going to mark him as useful until we see kind of more of him. And few more changes here, obviously somewhat less relevant. I did add a Yondu. I took him out from the useless tier. He can deal with prowess, that's kind of neat now, but you know, I still think the buff is quite horrible, and he does have slightly more damage. He can, you know, take away prowess, which is becoming more important in the game. But again, in a game where Omega Sentinel, where Nimrod exists, where War Machine exists even, there's just no real point of Yondu. And then I moved up Jane Foster slightly as well, because now you can actually sort of use her well enough without her being awakened, really. And she does have the shock immunity. But again, when you have like Dr. Doom, what are you gonna do with Jane Foster? Like, Dr. Doom has access to shock, he's shock immune fully and properly, and has much better buff control, and on top of it he has power control and everything else. You know what I mean? With Jane Foster, is just, again, impossible really to justify kind of meaningful investment unless you really like the character. And I think that's about it from the more meaningful changes here to the list. Let me know what you guys think about it. Again, Wiccan and Wong are still gonna stay here for a while. I do see Wiccan actually moving up as well, because I have been seeing some crazy things from Wiccan, especially on Hulkling boss. But I'm gonna leave that aside from now. I just rank 3'd my Wiccan as well, so I might mess around with. I probably will mess around with him a bit more. And I think that is it for now. Obviously, we have the Juggernaut buff upcoming. Hopefully, you know, that juggles him up a bit. But I think I covered everything. I spoke for a while. Ultimately, remember, this is a game. Rank the champions that you want. Rank the champions that you like. You don't have to agree with my classification or ranking of the champions. That's just the way I see the game, for the reasons that I do my best of explaining to you guys. All things put together, let me know, what do you think of my tier list? What do you think, which champion should be moved up or down, or maybe you agree with majority of it? And all that being said, as I said, link is going to be in the video description, and I'm going to catch you guys soon. See ya. Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about